Hi, this is Bernie Marsden, and you're listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
Welcome to the night. You think you know Night Demon? Then the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast is for you. Step into the darkness as we peel back the curtain to give you an unprecedented, all-access look into the mind and the heart of the demon. We're talking band history, song analysis, studio anecdotes, stories from the road. It's everything a diehard Night Demon fan could want and more. This is the only place to learn the inside scoop, the deep dive trivia, the untold tales from the band members themselves and those closest to the Night Demon story. Need more? The sacred Night Demon Crypt will be pried open to reveal demo recordings that have never before seen the light of day, all with in-depth commentary by the band and the people who were there for the writing and recording process. This is a gold mine, a treasure trove of all things Night Demon. Head over to nightdemon.net or wherever you listen to podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Isn't it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers, like our Facebook page, or follow us on Twitter at NoShockPod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We would like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Bernie Marsden
of Whitesnake, or formerly of Whitesnake. Right. I'm sorry. Now, original guitar player for Whitesnake.
Yeah, now he does blues and solo singer-songwriter type stuff.
Yeah, and he has a new album out. What's that called?
Kings.
Kings, and it's a tribute to
B.B. King, Freddie King, and Albert King.
And it's covers.
Yeah.
And it's like some deep cuts type
right.
stuff. He was a fantastic interview. We conducted this interview on a Sunday morning. I don't think I slept Saturday night.
Yeah.
I'm serious. I didn't sleep at all. So
I woke up early Sunday morning.
We were ecstatic to have him. We were even more excited that I think that he's going to come back on for a part 2 this October, November type.
Yeah, got some more recordings that he's working on, so I'm excited.
I'm so excited. And we won't give the title of what's coming out, but it's really exciting news.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, so, hey, what have you been doing here with music?
Well, actually, today I bought an EP from a band called Grace. Peter Cornell is the singer, songwriter, main guy from the band. They actually came here in the 90s and played at Ribco, and I missed the show, and I don't remember why. Either I didn't know who they were or I was busy. And they weren't real famous. You didn't really know who they were, but he's the brother of Chris Cornell from Soundgarden.
It's got to be good.
Yeah, and he was actually in another band in the 90s called Inflatable Soul with two of his sisters, and it's pretty good. So I ordered this. I'd never heard it. It's 5 songs. Don't know really what it sounds like, but look forward to. I've been searching for it for a long time, and I just happened to see it on eBay today. So, bam, it's mine.
It's a Pandora's box of music, is it not?
Yeah.
Well, I have not purchased anything this week, but I have been listening to Problem Factory from Rain Dance.
Okay.
Andre Cuomo, one of the former guests of Nothing Shocking podcast, original cast member of the MTV's The Real World. Love that album, and you don't have it, but I do.
No, I know. I don't have it.
I've been listening to it just because it's a contagious listen. I just think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
I just can't even put into a genre what you're expecting out of it. A little heavy sometimes, a little lighter sometimes. It's kind of got the full gamut. But anyway, we have Bernie Marsden coming on here, so we need to get to this interview.
All right, good night.
Good night. Bernie, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Bernie, thanks for joining us today.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. We're so excited to do this interview.
Yeah.
So we've been giddy all weekend for it, so this is fantastic. So you were extremely busy during the COVID-19 restrictions. You released a new album, Kings, this past June. Can you talk more about the creation of this album during the pandemic?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate. It looks like I had hindsight in a way. At the end of 2019, I started to cut most of the backing tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just before I recorded at Abbey Road with Joe Bonamassa for his Royal Tea album. So I had a lot of stuff in the can before the pandemic came in, before the gates were closed, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So it enabled me to go back in and finish the Kings album during 2020, and then I spent the most part of this year getting it together, really, and thinking, well, it's about time I put it out. So that's what. And also, I've done another record, which is relative to the fine city you're in. Is the first sessions I did were all chess recordings from the 50s and 60s.
Oh wow, cool!
And that went so well that the following weekend I booked the studio again. That's when we did the King stuff. So there's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about later in the year, because that's coming out, I think, in October, November. That's all of the songs, or the songs that influenced me greatly. When I was a teenager, from Sonny Boy, Williamson, Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, Otis Rush. The list from Your Fair City is very, very large.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, just talk a little bit about how you discovered the blues and how that influenced you.
Yeah, we can. I was lucky when I was about 14, maybe even a little bit younger. I had a cousin who was in a band in Liverpool during the Merseybeat era, which when you're 13 or 14 was most impressive,
Mm-hmm.
And he played harmonica in a band, and he lived in Liverpool, which is about 200 miles from the tiny, tiny town I grew up in. And when he came home, I wanted to impress him with my guitar skills, which were very, very poor. But I thought I was brilliant at the time, And I said, look, I can play this opening line from a song by the Searchers or by the Hollies or the Beatles or something. And he looked at me and watched me play, and he didn't look very impressed, and I wondered why. And he said, if you can learn that, learn this. And he gave me some EPs. He told me to get them by Howlin' Wolf and Sonny Boy. And so I started off learning that stuff at the age of about 14. So I kind of kicked off into that genre very, very early, and that stayed with me all of my career.
Oh, fantastic. When it comes to recording covers, what challenges does it present when recording these blues classics like you did?
Good question. I could have made the Kings album, especially, probably any time in the last 30 years, musically. But I wouldn't have really understood what I was singing about. And I think it takes a long time to understand what these traditional songs are all about. And I think you need to lead some kind of lifetime to understand the lyric. So I got into, even though some of the songs on Kings are well known, some are pretty obscure. I mean, Key to the Highway has been covered by many, many people, but it's such a great story. And one of the last times I saw the great B.B. King, he sang that song. I was fortunate enough to be, 10 feet away from him on the side of the stage watching him. And as he sang the song, and when I leave this town, I won't be back no more. I knew that he wouldn't be back, and it was quite a poignant moment, and it kind of crystallized what the song was all about, love, losing and stuff, and not just the usual blues genre.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, you had 2 instrumental tracks on there as well that you penned.
Yeah, the 2 instrumentals were basically the label said to me, have you got, do you have any new stuff? And I said, well, I always have new stuff, but I'm not going to suddenly try to write a song just because it's a blues-based album or whatever, I said, but I got a couple of instrumental things, so Runaway really is my thank you to the whole of the Freddie King instrumental tunes over the years that we all tried to learn to play when we were coming up,
Yeah.
and it's a tone thing with the guitar, and I put some licks in there that guitarists will say, well, I know where that's from, kind of thing. It's a thank you more than a tribute.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
When you're approaching a covers album, and obviously there's so many songs that have inspired you on all different genre levels, what does it take for you to kind of narrow down the tracks that you would really desire to cover, opposed to, obviously there's going to be some songs that you're going to leave off. How do you just narrow it down to, okay, these are the 12 tracks that I would like to cover?
Yeah.
How does it work?
I think you just have to be kind of, take everything, do what you really want to do. And I could probably do another album or another 10 songs that I dearly love. But I just wanted to do the ones this time first that mean the most to me. And I think things like Help the Poor, which is pretty obscure, B.B. King tune. And I just like the idea of doing that and maybe just changing it a little bit around. What I didn't want to do was try and sound and be these guys, because there's lots of people who can, make kind of their impression. You can play a certain way, but nobody can ever replace these people. And I just wanted to put the guitar into the part of the mix, other than that's the part of the vocal, other than, I think 20 years ago, it would have been all about the guitar playing. I'm not so much concerned with that now. I do what I do. I've worked around a lot of fantastic guitar players who can play literally 1,000 notes a minute, which is fine, but it's not really my thing. And occasionally you get the guys who can do everything, like Joe, for instance.
Yeah.
And it's like, he said to me, "Are you going to play on this new album?" And I said, "I don't think so." And I said, "Don't worry, I'll write the songs with you. That'll do me," which is nice of him to ask, but. I'm past that stage, really, Eric. It's a long time ago. I know what I can do. I enjoy doing it, and it seems to me that the people who come to see me play, they enjoy it as well. To me, that's more gratifying than being the greatest guitar player in the world.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the other players you have on your album?
On this album,
yeah,
the guy, the piano player is a guy called Bob Hadrill. He's a kind of, what would you call it, a solid British blues area guitar, piano player, keyboard player. John Gordon, the bass player, I played with for about 20 years now, off and on. He's a James Jamerson acolyte, and he basically says, do you want this in the 50s style, or do you want 1961 style, or that kind of thing? And John really knows his stuff, And the drummer is a guy called Jim Phillips, who actually plays with Bob Geldof's band, which is about as far away from blues as you can get. But Jim is a dyed-in-the-wool rhythm player, and he came in with a drum kit from all sorts of things. One of the drums was 1930s because he wanted a certain sound.
Oh, fantastic.
That kind of thing. That kind of commitment is what you don't get with your regular session guy.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. As we see Kings as a product of your Inspirations series, what can we expect with your future Inspiration series endeavors? You said you're going to release something here in October, November. Is this going to be an ongoing thing for you yearly, or how's it going to work?
Yeah, I think so. We've got a couple of things. Like I say, the chess recordings, they're ready for release. They're done, and that'll be out in a couple of months. After that, I have a bunch of recordings I've made of covers again, but from the rock guys. So we're looking at Johnny Winter, Leslie West, Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, that kind of thing, which is more in the keeping. And I did that with a 3-piece. I used the guys from Rory Gallagher's last lineup to do that, which was pretty special.
Fantastic.
And also, I'm also I'm not looking for, but if I get to hear something by a new band or a new artist, we'll use the Inspiration series for that as well, because as I was inspired by those guys, I hope that this may, the stuff that I do might inspire some 18-year-old guitar player to listen to Freddie King. Well, if that happens to one person, then I've done a certain amount of a good job.
Yeah, awesome. You have quite a guitar collection. Is there a particular guitar you used on this album, or did you use a variety?
I do have quite a guitar collection. You've done your homework. I used on the Kings album. I used a few, not so many, but on the bluesy stuff of the chess stuff, I think I used a Gibson 335 and probably my old Les Paul. On the Kings album, the one that we're talking about now, I probably used 3 or 4 guitars. There's an old slide guitar thing I use, a guitar that Peter Green borrowed for a while. He had that in his house for a while, and I was looking forward to playing him this record, and of course that was taken away from us as well. But there you go. Guitar-wise, that's about it. I didn't dig anything spectacular. I think I used an old Telecaster on a couple of tracks, which is unusual for me. So people will look out for that somewhere and tell me, that's the Telecaster, and I'll say, I can't remember. I'm not so much a... Joe is the top guitar nerd. I'm a bit of a nerd, but he's king nerd. He knows it. He knows more. He's forgotten about more stuff than I've owned. So there you go. So you can imagine what we're both like in the studio together, talking about guitars. Well, that's it, really. We don't really talk about much else,
Well, I saw.
Now the guitar thing is just one of those things. I bought a guitar that I still have. I bought in Chicago many years ago. So there you go.
Nice. Well, I saw on Facebook Joe had put on there that I think he went on Facebook Marketplace and bought a guitar while he was on tour somewhere, and I was like, oh man, how cool is that? Like Joe shows up at your house and buys your guitar. Have you ever done anything like that?
He went out for a walk. We were at a gig in Brighton. He went out for a walk on Brighton is a seafront town here, and. He went out for a walk between soundcheck and gig, and he bought a 64 335. And not many people could do that, I could assure you. That was pretty cool. And he was playing it in the soundcheck when we got back, and I said, where's that from? He said, I just bought it. So, it never ends. It's quite I did laugh. It was funny.
Yeah.
As we see and hear artists recording new music from their homes with today's technology, what is your preference when it comes into recording new music at home, using new technology, or do you prefer going into that proper studio recording music?
Technology? What's that? I like to work with people, and I'm old school, I'm old-fashioned. I'm old, basically, but... I can write a song with the closest I really get to techno. I have tried. I've tried over the last 20 years, to get myself together with the computer side of stuff, and I'm just hopeless. And so now with the advent of the wonderful thing of the phone, if I have an idea for a song, I sit down with an acoustic guitar or just plug in a guitar, put the idea down, think it over for a few days or whatever. Try and put it into some kind of order, and then I call the guys, and then we go in the studio. Unfortunately, it's only a 15-minute drive for me, and we go in there and we put them all together, and that's what I did with these records. So I'm not technically minded, never have been really. I can barely plug the guitar in. But, as my late father used to say, I'd be changing a plug on something in the house, and he'd see me fiddling around with it, and he'd look at me and say, give it to me. And with that no matter what age I was or what fame level I'd ever reach, he'd look at me and say, it's a good thing you can play that guitar, my son. And I can see him now every time I'm trying to fix something. I'm just hopeless, But I can still play the guitar a bit, so that's okay.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So I was listening to Jonesy's Jukebox, probably a year ago, and he had Billy Gibbons on, and they were discussing their guitar talk, and they talked about the gauge of string that Billy uses, and he uses a really thin, I think it's sevens or something like that, strings, and he explained that he was backstage, and B.B. King came into his dressing room, and BB started fiddling around with his guitar, and he says to Billy, he said, "Why do you work so hard?" Because he was referring to the gauge of his strings. And so I guess that kind of is the question to have is like, how heavy do you go, or how light do you go with your strings?
Well, then he gave me 2 sets of those sevens, and he said, "You'll have a lot of fun, Bernie." And I have to admit, I still have those unopened. I think in one of my guitar cases, just with a little note that says "From Billy." The strange thing he said about the B.B. King thing, because the first day I ever met B.B. King was way back in the late 70s, and during the conversation, I was with him for quite a long time, and he passed me his guitar, and I said, "Check this out," because I sound a magnificent-looking guitar, and he just passed it to me, totally random. And I could barely play, I have to say. I was like a complete amateur. He must have thought, well, this guy's not very good, because I was in awe of the great man. And but I was amazed how thin the gauge was on his strings. And when I played his guitar, and it's probably more me than the guitar, but the guitar players will know what I mean. It was buzzing kind of all over the frets. And yet when he played, it was absolutely perfect. So it just is, it's the person that plays the instrument that makes all the difference. And I've never forgotten that, and I should have, it seemed quite nerdy at the time to say, "Oh, Mr. King, what size strings do you use?" I thought, I can't ask B.B. King that kind of question. I wish I had, but I did ask him quite a few questions.
Oh, so cool. You've worked with some of the biggest lead singers in the world of rock and roll. How has that influenced your own vocal style as a solo artist?
Pure jealousy. What do you do? I when I was a kid in the band, about 15, no, older than that, about 18, we had a guy in the band who and lead singers when I was in a band, they were always kind of the leaders of the band. Their fathers owned the truck or something, or owned the PA system or something. So you had to have them, that kind of thing. And this guy could sing okay, but he wasn't very good. And I even knew then that he wasn't very good. But he had those 2 extra octaves, so he could do the scream. And I thought, that's what you got to do. And I could never, ever do it. So by the time I was about 18, I realized that I couldn't be a lead singer. And I thought, well, that's all right. That doesn't really matter. But I always wanted to be able to do that top end. So when I started to hear really good singers, especially when Joe Cocker was younger stuff, and that wonderful way he controlled his scream as well. And I got in, and Paul Rodgers came along, and Robert Plant came along, and David Coverdale or whatever. And you thought, oh, well, that's what they do. But I'm the lead guitarist, so I do my thing, they do their thing. So the great thing about it is when you're a writer, you can influence the song because you know how good the singer is. And because if you want to I know what I want to do on a song, and I could say, why don't you try it like this in my kind of middle voice, and they would take it into another octave up and make it sound fantastic. So it was always a plus thing. There was never a negative or a minus going on.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. I wanted to kind of touch upon your books. Yeah. You've written 2.
Yeah.
It always fascinates me as an artist takes on the responsibility of writing a book. What are the challenges when it comes to as you're a songwriter? How does that translate into being an author and writing a book?
I think writing the book was kind of it did me a lot of good. At the time when I did it, I've got 2 2 grown-up girls now, but when they were smaller, I thought, well, I was still traveling the world a lot and doing a lot of gigs and dashing around, between, even like 30 years ago. And I thought, well, when they grow up, should anything happen to me, on the road or whatever, they won't really know what their dad did. So I started to write it down. So I got about, I don't know, a few thousand words done, and I started to read it back, and I thought, oh, this is boring, this is et cetera, et cetera. And do they really need to know this? But then I got into it, and I realized that my memory was, pretty good. I had a couple of crucial time diaries that my late mother had kept, and she said, oh, I've got some diaries of yours at home. And it wasn't so much a day-to-day diary, but there was a couple of crucial periods, where I first worked with, the first day I met Gary Moore is documented, and that kind of thing. And I did the Marquee and all these crazy, famous clubs in London, and they're all listed over a sort of a 6-week period where I obviously was excited about it and wrote it all down. And so that was really useful. And once I got into it, I could remember things that had happened, and my memory's pretty good. And the more you think about it when you're sitting down on your own at the computer typing away, more stuff comes back. So writing it was good because I did it from a sort of almost a family point of view. I then sent it to a friend of mine who I really like his writing. This guy is called Harry Shapiro. He's written books on Gary and Eric Clapton and Jack Bruce, really good writer. And I sent a draft to Harry to say, I'm working on this. Do you think I should carry on, or just tell me if it's, a load of baloney, And he said, and Harry is a good pro, and he would have said, this is, stick to playing the guitar kind of thing, And he called me back within only 2 or 3 days and said, this is really good, he said. I can, give you a few pieces of advice. He said, but, you had me from the very first part. And he said, carry on. And then I ended up self-publishing it for a while. And then HarperCollins, the giants of the book world, came in about 3 years ago now and asked me if they could republish it. And we re-edited it and found new pictures. And from that, I went on to the second one. And now I'm actually working on the third book at the moment.
Oh, fantastic. Well, it wouldn't behoove us if we didn't discuss Whitesnake. I don't want to dive into Whitesnake itself, but I wanted to kind of ask you about the transition from your time leaving Whitesnake into your approach to becoming a solo artist. And, you'll hear all kinds of stories about artists that venture off from their successful band to try to become their own solo artist afterwards. Their struggles, or it was easy, or however it worked out. But how did it work out for you transitioning from Whitesnake, a highly successful classic rock band, into your own solo venture?
Well, you've hit the phrase on the head there, highly successful rock band. Where do you go after that? And it was tough because we didn't break up with a fight or with a row or with, it was kind of like an anticlimactic end because it was based really on very bad business, which I do go into in the book to a certain extent. We don't need to get stuck into that here.
Right.
But it was to do with that. There was no musical differences really. It was an impasse really. We were doing really well, selling out shows everywhere, but really the income was so negligible that we just had to start asking questions. And the more questions we asked, the less information we could find. So when it split, David went to America and with the intention that we would split to get rid of the management and then come back together. And that never happened. So there you go. That's what happened with that. I then put a couple of bands together, and I should have stayed with, I think before we started to record, I said I like to look forward to stuff, and I don't like to say I wish I'd done this, but what I could have done more was I should have gone solo before having bands a long time before I did. And whether it would have worked out, well, of course, we'll never know. But, I put a few collectives together with other members of, the original Whitesnake.
Right.
And we did that for a little while, and it was pretty successful. We did okay. We made a couple of albums. The band was called Company of Snakes, and then we had a thing called M3, and and I thought that having 1, 2, or 3 members of the original Whitesnake would be much more beneficial than having just me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it didn't really work out like that. It just meant that 3 people were always in the band. That's where, in fact, the keyboard player, the M3, used to call the band Them 3. Because we would walk into a press conference or something, and of course, they would all the people wanted to talk to us, but I know what that was like, because that was the same when Whitesnake began, because they would want to talk to John Lord and Ian Pace and David.
Mm.
So there was a them 3 situation there. So I kind of understood that. I thought, this is okay. We then started getting, with the advent of the internet, we'd be playing in, let's give you an example, Russia. Say we're playing in Russia somewhere. And we'd be driving along the road, and there'd be a poster about 30 meters wide that would say Whitesnake, and in brackets would say M3, about 2 feet high. And so people say, hang on, Whitesnake are playing in a club in Moscow that holds 500 people. Fantastic. Well, of course, there's no way that Whitesnake was going to be playing to a club. So then somebody would take a photograph of that and send it to the Whitesnake agent in America or in London. Then I would get a call or a letter or an email or whatever saying, you can't do this. This is not Whitesnake. I said, I'm not doing it. The band's called M3. The contract is quite clear. Mm. But promoters, want people at gigs. So they put Whitesnake up on the posters. And then you'd get closer and closer, and you'd say it's a ex-Whitesnake. And frankly, I got pretty bored with it, to be honest with you. That's the word. And I thought, well, this is okay. We're doing okay. But and I made this record Shine about 7 years ago. And that was a solo. I'd done a couple of solo things before, and I just wanted to, I thought, well, at my age now, whatever it was, 25 years ago or 20 years ago, I start putting my name on the poster, and if people come to see me, well, that's great. If they don't, well, then, maybe, I'll try and join a band somewhere or something like that. And it's worked out, okay. The back catalogue, I have to say, especially God Bless America, has been very good to me, and that's enabled me to do a certain stuff or to say no to a certain amount of stuff. And I'm fortunate for that. But there again, it's a good back catalogue.
Oh, yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Jeff, do you have any questions left?
No.
Well, hey, Bernie, we've ran out of our allotted time. We wanted you've been fantastic.
Yeah, it's been so much fun.
Thank you so much for your time. We were so excited to have you on. So I think I didn't sleep a wink all weekend.
Yeah.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's about 10 o'clock in the evening your time, isn't it? Something like that.
It's we're in the morning, so we just got done drinking coffee. So
morning.
Before we let you go for your afternoon, is there anything that we did not cover that you would like to promote or plug?
No, not really. No, the book is doing well. The record is out there. We can talk again when Chess comes out. If you like.
Well, we would love to have you back on.
Yeah. And if you want to talk a bit about my time in Chicago or in Mississippi, we could do that at some point. Whatever you want to do.
Oh, we would definitely. If you're as welcome as many times as we could possibly get you on. This has been fantastic. Bernie, thank you so much. You are fantastic.
Thank you.
You're welcome, man. It's good to talk to you. I enjoy a podcast myself, so there you go.
Oh, fantastic. And we'll be back in touch with your publicist to maybe do a part 2 this fall. Does that sound good? Take care.
Yeah.
Okay, look after yourselves there in the Windy City.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Everybody grinds the stone and makes their own mistakes. Hide in the you just can't do it here. Hey. Everybody eyes the gun and screams inside their head. Everybody bites their tongue and pays their bills instead. Hide in the spotlights, fight the grip of death. You can have the air you need, but you best not take one breath. Hey. Roll the dice. Take your chances. Everybody knows the game is fixed, there is no prize. Everybody pulls the plug and says their last goodbyes. Move to the sunshine, fight the grip of nights. If they ever take from you, then you plug out both their